We're still a quorum. We're good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Committee meeting. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question and mute when you are not speaking. I don't want to hear your cats. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table and give it to the MAG staff. If you are in the audience today, please remember to sign in at the information table. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available for MAG staff. Before we proceed with a roll call vote, we wanted to take a minute to thank Michelle Stokes and Nicole Gibson, who have stepped down from the COC committee. We would like to thank them for their service as committee members and acknowledge all their hard work on and off the committee. We wish you both nothing but the best in your future endeavors. We would also like to welcome Mila, who will now be representing GUMOM. Give a wave so they can see. There we go.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes. We will now ask Haley to proceed with a roll call. Please indicate you are here and your organization after Haley calls your name.
Thank you. Michelle Alberti. Don Bogart.
Here. Good morning, everyone.
Can you say your organization too, Don?
Oh, sorry. Homeless Youth Connection.
No problem. Thank you. Vanessa Carthel. Allison Cook Davis.
Present, Morrison Institute for Public Policy.
Thank you. Erin Cowan-Haig. I think Callie is going to join in a moment. Stephanie Crum.
Hello, here, Stephanie Crum with Solari, HMIS.
Anne Marie Johnston.
Anne Marie Johnston here with Community Bridges.
Thank you. Christina Lopez. Marcy McFarland.
Marcy McFarland, Home Inc.
Jim McPherson.
Hello, everyone. Jim McPherson, Phoenix Community Alliance.
Jennifer Page.
Good morning, Jennifer Page from Mercy Care.
Aaron Rain.
Aaron Rain, present, City of Mesa.
Patricia Scott Lopez. Sarah Sims.
Sarah Sims, Phoenix Elementary School District number 1.
Laura Scott Nicky.
I just got on. Good morning, Laura Scott Nicky, the Salvation Army.
Mila Valle. Is that how you say your name, Mila?
Yes, Mila Valley from UMOM New Day Center.
Thank you. Christopher Wallace.
Present, VA.
Emily Walsh.
Here with Maricopa County.
Rihanna Islas. Co-chair Nathan Smith.
Present, Phoenix Rescue Mission.
And co-chair Richard Cruz.
President, Human Services Campus.
Thank you.
Wonderful. The next item on the agenda is the call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the Continuum of Care Committee that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. MAG staff, were there any comments this month received or anyone who has joined the call to offer comments?
There were no public comments received or members of the audience wishing to speak at this time.
I was looking forward to having fun. I was. Okay. So thank you. We'll move on. So next, the consent agenda will approve multiple items at the same time. Committee members can always ask for an agenda item to be pulled off the consent agenda to be heard during the meeting, at which time staff can provide additional information, give a presentation, and answer any questions. Does any member of the committee have questions or comments on the consent agenda? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I motion.
It has been so moved by Laura Scott Nicky. Is there a second?
I second.
And second by Jim McPherson. So for the committee members in the room, we will do a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Feels so Bay Area. Those opposed say nay. Okay, for members joining remotely, I will ask Haley to proceed with a roll call vote. Please indicate clearly how you vote, stating yay or nay after your name is called.
Thank you. Don Bogart,
Yay.
Callie Lamers for Aaron Cowan-Hay,
Yay.
Stephanie Crum,
Yay.
Anne Marie Johnston,
Yay.
Jim McPherson,
Aye.
Jennifer Page,
Yay.
Laura Scott Nicky,
Yay.
Mila Valle,
Yay.
Christopher Wallace,
Yay.
Emily Walsh.
Yay.
Did I miss anyone? Great. Back to you, chairs.
Okay, motion passes. The communication work group works to create unified and streamlined messages throughout the continuum of care and out into the community. Jim McPherson will now provide an update on the communications work group current work, next steps, and ways to get involved. We'll now hand it over to Jim, and I look forward to people's questions, comments, and whatnot afterwards.
Yes, thank you, co-chair. Appreciate the introduction and appreciate the support of committee members and members of the community and staff who helped pull this update together. Several months ago, we were asked to pull together a work group to look at the communications of what we do and what the Continuum of Care does. And this is the result so far of what we've come up with. And yes, again, we encourage your input at any time during this presentation and beyond. So the mission was, of course, to put together a communication plan and materials that describe the work that we do, and then to ensure that everyone within the continuum of care are aware of the news, information, activities of not only the continuum of care, but the things that we do and advocate for on a daily basis. Next slide, please. I want to thank these members of the work group who pulled together to meet over the course of, I'm guessing, about a year. And many of the names you'll recognize. Also would like to again thank Katie, Haley, and Dylan for their support as staff members to keep us on track online and moving forward. So one of the first things was to pull together a logo that showcases what we do and presents a face of the continuum of care. And so you'll see a vertical version and a horizontal version that was one among many options that we looked at, examined, discussed, tweaked, you name it. We came together with this logo. And what you can see is a representation of a house, because affordable housing is, of course, something that we all care about. An individual with a heart represented in the center, and the two C's, continuum and care, representing the arms. And it just showcases in a positive light and in one picture what we strive to achieve. Next slide, please. We also came up with a tagline, and again, from a number of options and we discussed, we came up with action brings us home. Again, from a much larger list, we wanted it short and sweet. We wanted it action oriented, and we think it fits well with our other communication strategies among the organization and among the other organizations that are doing good work in our community in the area of affordable housing and homelessness prevention. Next slide, please. So one of the nuts and bolts initiatives of a communications work group is to put together a plan. And so we have done so. Again, this is draft, and it will be adapted and modified and implemented as we move forward. So again, a lot of these things can be tweaked around the edges and in order to improve for future iterations of the plan. And so we're looking at objectives, our target audiences, key messages, communication tactics, and key performance indicators. Next slide, please. So let's go into depth as to what the plan discusses. First, in the area of objectives, we want seamless communication. We want to enhance the understanding and awareness of what we do and how to the work that is being done to address homelessness, to increase public support and engagement in homelessness initiatives, provide feedback opportunities for members of the public to discuss, to strengthen, there we go. I've got the captions right in the middle of my box. Strengthen partnerships with local businesses and organizations to garner support of what we do, enhance collaboration and coordination between all the different agencies and service providers within the continuum of care, and create consistent messaging to media, public, and neighbors interested in homelessness. Those are our objectives. Next slide, please. So our partners, our target audiences are as follows. Of course, the continuum of care partners, local government officials, community members and advocates, donors and funders, faith-based organizations, the media, and homeless individuals and families. It's a comprehensive list. There's multiple audiences. They're so important, so that those who are that we designate as being those that we want to reach. Then our key messages: that the continuum of care is working to end homelessness for everyone, that together we can make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. We understand that there are not enough homeless resources compared to the need, and we're working on that. We envision a future where every Arizonan has a place to be at home, empowering them to live stable and purposeful lives. And then we encourage you and everyone out there amongst our target audiences to join us in building a compassionate community that supports those experiencing homelessness. Next slide. We also encourage the use of plain and simple language that is people-centered, such as people experiencing homelessness versus the homeless. When discussing locations, we'll use phrases like the neighborhood as opposed to the zone. And for example, when talking about housing, we'll use affordable rents and mortgages, homes that meet our needs, or homes within reach. By communicating, using these words and phrases over and over, the mindset is placed in a positive frame of mind to get our messages across. Then continuing on, these are the channels and tactics that we will be using and are using to help communicate what we all do. Within internal to the organization, we're putting together a communication listserv, and Katie will describe that in depth in a little bit. We already have a great monthly newsletter, and I hope you all subscribe to it, and encourage everyone you know to subscribe to it as well, because it's chock full of great information, dates, times, places of news, events, activities. And then the wonderful learning management system for training and understanding that has been discussed and shown at previous meetings of our group. Externally, we have a website that is been refined and adapted and added to. Again, congratulations to staff to helping us pull some ideas together that we thought the work group thought was important. We're going to be including a blog, so we encourage individuals and organizations who have information to share and stories to tell to submit those items to be included in the blog. We'll amp up our collaboration with media outlets to help showcase the stories that are out there and the work that is being done. We've all have social media tools at our disposal, and we will continue to be using MAG's resources as well to help craft messages and send messages, and then encourage you to use those same messages, forward, like, share, all those good things. And then finally, we'll be holding public events and town halls, and have been in the past, but we'll continue to do so to help get the word out about all that is going on, and gain feedback from the community about what their feelings are, what their needs are, and encourage them to participate as well. And then, so we put together an annual calendar, so these provide kind of like monthly highlights or focus areas. There, of course, will be other stories to tell, but every month it'd be nice to have kind of a theme or something to talk about that we really would like to stress. So in January, for example, the point in time count. In February, the Q4 homelessness trends report. In March, the HUD funding announcement. In April, Arizona Gives Day and the point in time count results. Then, as you are well experiencing there in Phoenix and Arizona, the heat, so heat relief, and the first quarter homelessness trend report. Continuing on in the summer, heat relief needs to be addressed and discussed and referred to and resolved. And plus in July, the HUD appropriation announcement. In August, the Q2 homelessness trends report. And then in the fall, we have things like Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October, and then the Q3 homelessness trends report in November. So again, we'll be adding to the calendar. We'll be refining our messaging with each individual as each individual month goes on. Next, please. Then key performance indicators. It's always good to review where you've been, what did well, what are the continuing challenges. And so we'll be looking at the number of stakeholders that have been engaged and actively participating in the continuum of care. We'll be using website analytics like visitors, page views, time spent on our website and social media. And we'll report on media coverage and the mentions in relevant publications online and on the air. So next steps, we will continue to update our annual calendar, and we encourage you to provide us with the events, activities that you are involved in so we can disseminate them in the various communication tools that we have. We are going to create and maintain a communication listserv, and then implement, monitor, and report back on the communications plan to you and to the full board as well. Katie, can you go into depth on the listserv, please?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim, for that update. The communication listserv is really for anybody who is doing communications for your organization, or if you are interested, we'll be sending out kind of talking points, social media, sample, kind of everything that you would need to essentially just copy and paste to repost about that information. It'll include kind of everything in that communications calendar that Jim mentioned, but also upcoming events or things to look out for. So it is also, if you want to have your information included, say you have a new research report about to be released in the next month, you could let us know about when it will come out and to be on the lookout for that. So, or if you're opening a shelter or starting a new program, any of those things are things that we would include in that communications calendar. We only know what you all tell us, so it is really helpful for you all to let us know when those things are coming out, but that will go out at least monthly, but it may be more frequently as more events are happening, or if we have new press releases or things like that happening. So the other thing about this is it is all internal and will include communication points about pressing issues. So for example, when the Access Sober Living home closure happened, it's like key talking points about how people are talking about it. What does it look like? What do you need to know? Kind of all of those different updates. And those will be kind of regular updates that are coming. So if you're interested or have staff that are interested in joining that listserv, send an email to myself or to hsinfo@azmag.gov and we can get you subscribed.
Great, thank you. I think we have one last slide, which is a good transition into questions, comments, need for more information, ideas, things that I may have missed. But again, Katie's information is here. So I open up for discussion, questions. And again, thanks to the task force and staff for helping get us to this point. And hopefully we'll even move forward even faster to get the word out and do good things as you do good things.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. So thank you for the presentation. Floor is open in terms of questions, comments, concerns, thoughts that people would like to share or lift, questions that could be answered as a result of what we've seen today.
Hey, Jim, thanks for that presentation. Nathan Smith here. Really thorough. I was writing a bunch of questions down, and as I was writing them down, you were answering them really well. So I appreciate the thorough presentation there. I wanted to there's two things that I'm really curious about. I'll start with, like you talked about the activities, the communication activities, using listserv and things like that. And then you had the plan, right, for each month of the year. So it looks like we'll probably take December off, which is a good idea. And what I was curious about is if there is a way, if there's room for communications that are not on that plan, that monthly plan currently, to be filtered in. Will the communications work group deal with some like ad hoc communications that arise over time that we're like, hey, we really got to get the word out about this, but it wasn't in the 11 months there. So just talk through how you'll filter in new things that need to be communicated.
Sure, and Katie, maybe you can help me as well. But I see the work group continuing, maybe not as frequently as we have, but in order to get the plan up and running, but on a regular basis, where those sorts of things can be, that can be discussed, and we've heard, and we need to adapt and incorporate what we've been hearing into the plan, and then roll into action from the things that come out from those comments and questions, concerns. Yes, we will be continuing. Does that help, Katie? Do you?
Yeah, the full communications plan has like a as events arise in addition to, so we'll continue to add that and then continue to adapt. So say something happens and it happens one year, we'll add it to the full calendar to be recurring. It really is kind of adaptive to the needs, but we know that sometimes like a shelter is not going to be opening every single year, for example.
Yeah,
but it's important. And it's important to, the drumbeat of information, that we regularly get it out to keep these issues that are of concern and interest to us top of mind, and worked on.
Just like practically, the reason why I brought it up is just because, like, this committee in particular hears a whole lot about a whole bunch of things happening in the community. One that comes to mind immediately, because it's been something we've talked about a lot in one of our work groups, is on, as we learn things about rapid rehousing, in other words, that there is a sort of a gap between the 12-month contracts and 24-month best practice, depending on the needs of an individual. And then we get to like, all right, how do we get that out? How do we get that out? And then you list a whole bunch of stakeholders with a whole bunch of communication methods that make me think that this committee should be leveraging the communications work group better to get the information to the right stakeholders, because that's really where I personally run into like a roadblock. What do we do next? And you have that set up. So that was the purpose for me asking that question.
Sure. Yeah, it would be the work group members, are not only administrative, have administrative duties, but they have some PR savviness. So, they're always thinking, what do we need to do? What do we need to, or how can we improve? How can we continue to get the word out? So yeah, we're here for you to help in your efforts, and the Continuum of Care's efforts as well.
I would say that this communication listserv is more for like outward facing and less programmatic facing. So more communications folks, things like that. But if you send that kind of like, definitely leverage, and we can figure out who is the right listserv to have that go to for that information. So it is the communications work group for that triage. But the listserv, if you want to subscribe to the listserv, I would say it's probably more your like who manages your social media, which may not be your like programs people.
Awesome. Other questions?
And I would encourage you to visit the website. Again, staff has done a great job in adapting and adding to it. So it's a really good one-stop shop for some information, plus these other tools that we've been talking about. So thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. Thanks, staff.
Hi, sorry. Always last minute asking questions.
Oh, no, go for it.
So, Katie mentioned that this is mostly like public facing communications. And I'm wondering, for the public, there's all these wonderful videos on the LMS explaining how to read the data dash flow, charts and other things, right? Are those videos, are there going to be videos explaining to the public what communications are going out there? How, like, what does it mean? How to interpret that?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, slightly complicated. So part of the talking points that will go out with the homelessness trends report, like to this listserv, it'll be the full trends report as an attachment, where to find it online, but also here's key messages. Here's what you should be tweeting if you're doing a LinkedIn post, if you're like a longer post versus a shorter post. We don't currently have like the how to read the homeless trends report video in it's just in the LMS. It's not a public facing video currently, but we are looking into like education and what does that look like and could that be something we have like standalone on the website? So that's something we've spent quite a bit of time internally talking about, of how do we make that more accessible? And that's something that the communications work group has spent a lot of time talking about, but we're not quite there yet.
Yes, and thank you for that answer. The reason I bring it up is because I know we want to bring more partners to the table from different sectors. And so I just think that would be really helpful. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for your work.
I just have one thing to add, and I feel like you guys should all see this coming because I've been beating this drum for a while, but I think this is like one of the perfect things to add to our strategic plan for next year. Like maybe that's something that we can work on, where it's like we can put together a group that's like, we want to make more outward facing videos to explain like, what is the COC? Like, what does it mean? Because I know a lot of other stuff in the LMS is designed for people who already have some sort of knowledge about it. So if we can like take it back even further and make it really digestible, that is definitely something we could add. So just keep it on your mind.
Perfect. Anything else? Anyone have anything else today?
Don, did you have something?
You have something else, Jim?
No, I thought Dawn had her hand raised.
She's muted.
Oh.
There we go.
I was just double checking the website to find out where we could find that information. So I just checked COCs first. Sorry.
Awesome.
And you found it? Yes. Great.
Okay. If no other questions, comments, thoughts, etc., we'll move. Okay. So now, annually, the Continuum of Care Committee is responsible for working on a variety of priorities. The COC committee will discuss these priorities and see what has been and what is yet to be completed in 2023, so we can really create a map for the rest of the year. And it also helps us think about other things that we additionally want to plug in and where we might want to plug in those conversations.
So just to kick us off, I know we looked at this last month, but we wanted to have a more in-depth discussion about all of the responsibilities and priorities we have now, really to gear us up for, you guessed it, strategic planning in a few months. So I know that we've had discussions around like, oh, we have these 2 tasks assigned and like they're okay, but maybe it doesn't fit exactly the work that we want to do. So this is a great time to just like kick anything around, like nothing is off limits. Let's talk about it to see what would be feasible to add in, or if there's anything in here where you're like, well, I don't think that we really need to review this every month or every quarter. That's something that's up for discussion too. So I will turn it over to all of you.
So what are your thoughts? Like, is this adequate? What are the things that have been burning that you said, like, we need to actually address this? Can I get a split screen so I can see the people? There we go. Okay, so I'll start since Jiminy's in the room. Okay, just a question. Is it like, if we wanted to do the count in a different way, does that originate from this table, or does that originate from the board?
My question is, what does that mean to you? What do you mean do the pit count in a different way?
So, I mean, I think that we all have conversations after the pit count, before the pit count, during the pit count. The pit count is inadequate in terms of its ability to actually count, right? Like it's definitely not Sesame Street. And so with that being the case, like, but we keep looking at it every year to say like, okay, well, we're going to keep doing it. And because it is what we've always done, we'll always do it, because at least it's a metric that remains consistent in terms of its inadequacy. And so I think like we have brilliant minds around all of these tables that could figure out different ways, a better way to do the pit count, that potentially then from this point forward, maybe we're doing a better pit count. Right? Like, does it make sense to do the pit count when we do? Does it make sense to do the pit count in a way that, just not saying that this is the strategy that we come up with, but does it make more sense to do the pit count as like 3 different pit counts, and then taking the mean of those 3 different pit counts to actually have a better picture around who we're actually seeing in a given time, right? Like there should be some way to increase the accuracy of it. So like, does that come from, through recommendations for that, come from this table? Or do they come from other spaces, right? Like, could that be something that we wrestle with? And I will acknowledge that could just be like Richard's own crusade. And if that's Richard's own crusade, y'all can leave me out there like that, but I don't think it is. So, yeah, but that's a question that I have. For example, like, could that be something that is within our jurisdiction as far as this table is concerned?
Yes, thank you for elaborating. So we do have some guardrails set up by HUD. So there are some restrictions as to like what we can and can't do.
Correct.
And Katie, if you need to interrupt me at any time, you can, but I'm going to take a swing at it first. I believe we have to do it at that same time every year. I know we had an exemption before because of the Super Bowl, so that was allowed. I think we have to do it in one day. No? All right, I'm going to let Katie take it away so I don't confuse everybody.
There is an opportunity. We cannot do like 3 counts and average them. You can do like 1 count over 3 days. The reason Haley hesitated is it is very difficult to ensure that you are not double counting. You end up having a lot of duplication if we try to split it over 2 days, because of how mobile people are. Of like, we're not so big like LA, where people stay in North LA versus South LA. So that's why they do it over 3 days, and they do separated parts of the city, but they even have extreme issues with duplication. We've talked with them about it. Versus here, people are quite mobile from west to central to east, especially your central corridor crossing over. It is required, as Haley mentioned, to do in the last 10 days of January. We have always done it the last Tuesday of January. The other thing I'll caution you with is if you change methodology, we do have to have methodology approved by HUD. So that is conversation that can happen around this table. Ultimately, it is a board decision. They're the ones that direct pit count. But if we do change methodology and have extremely different numbers, we're going to need to do a lot of explaining and education in the media about why we changed it, why numbers are so different, what does that look like, et cetera. So I will pause, see if you have anything else to add.
And I don't want us to get caught up on that as an intervention. It was like, for example, right? It's not what I'm proposing, because I think that there's a lot of different people with different puzzle pieces around the table that can put together a much better picture than what I can think of by myself, right? I'm just thinking of what are the things that we look at from a system standpoint that we're like, this is inadequate, right? And how long are we going to eat like cold, stale food before we say like, let's cook it a different way, right? And at some point that has to happen for whatever it is, whether it's the pit count, whether it's something else. At some point we have to pivot to say like this, like we can do better work. And if we can do better work, then why aren't we can't just say we can't do that because it's too difficult to talk about it, right? Like we can't do that. Like that's like if we talk about like racial equity work, a lot of the pushback around racial equity work in spaces, well, it's too difficult to talk about race. Yeah, that doesn't mean we don't talk about it. We figure it out. So I'm just using I'm just bullying the pit count in this particular moment, right? And using that as an example of something. But I think that we need to be able to think of what are the things that we're just staring at that are like as opposed to having it be a talking point in unofficial spaces to say oh, this isn't the actual number, right? We actually use this. Okay, well, why can't we get this better, closer to this method, right? While also acknowledging at the same time, yes, there are certain restrictions that we have per HUD, right? So that's where I'm just starting at.
Yeah, I think the very short answer is yes, we can do that. And then we would just send it up to the board for approval. So if that is something that you guys wanted to work on, we would bring our lovely new staff, Brian, to the table, who is going to be running that for us in the future. But yes, so to make the long answer very short, yes.
If we're to do that, what's the runway we would need?
Next month, September, because you all would make recommendations and then it would go to local jurisdiction committee and we start pit count planning in October. So that's when we start kicking off with cities, getting them started. They are fully in planning mode by November, and then December is when we start training cities, and January is when we train nonprofits.
So it could be something where it's maybe our runway is too short for this year, but it's let's make sure we observe. And this is just a suggestion. You guys can take it, leave it, whatever. But it's hey, let's see how pit count goes. And then let's be really mindful as we're looking at that process, from the day that we start recruiting volunteers and training them to the day that all the information is released. What did that look like and what can be improved upon for the 2025 count? So that is something to consider. Although if you guys wanted to take it on and run with it in the next month, that is a challenge by choice for you all.
I have a question, and this is probably just my not really knowing how it all works. But in terms of the methods of doing the pit count, two things is that, one is there seems to be at least a feeling that doing it in January might not be the most ideal time. And then the other piece is the actual sort of how and over what period of time. And my question is from a methodological standpoint, would it be possible to do the official HUD pit count in January and do it at another time of year just to test to see is the timing really, something that we should be concerned about, that we then use that data or information to actually change any other kind of methodology that would help us to better collect the information in January. Sorry. I mean, it could be very too resource intensive. It could be
yeah. So two separate, I'm going to break that into two separate questions. The second question I'll attack first. Timing, HUD requires it in January. We have no choice but to do it then. Some jurisdictions choose to do a secondary count, but it is over 1,200 volunteers, over $100,000 that we spend to do the point in time count across the region. Mm-hmm. So it is very resource intensive for a data point that we strictly do because HUD asks us to do it. And we really are trying to move away from using point in time count data in our community. That's why we have all of these data tools in our community. I hope everybody agrees that we have better data tools than the point in time count, and really working with media to understand that there are better tools than point in time count, which is why we have decided not as an entire system to do additional counts throughout the year as an entire system because of how resource intensive it is. That is the day of is $100,000+. And then on top of it, jurisdictions are typically taking quite a few hours on top of that. I'm looking at Aaron because he helps plan it for Mesa. And it is a lot of time for jurisdictions, coordinating volunteers, training volunteers, getting them up to speed, recruiting volunteers, making sure they understand what they're going out and doing. On the second side of it, as far as methodology goes, there are currently 3 different methodologies that HUD approves. There is, you can do, and all 3 are actually established here in Maricopa County. So it's a direct census. So count every single block, drive every single block. The second option is known locations. So you start at known locations where people are experiencing homelessness and then spiral out from there to then do a direct census. And then the third option is an extrapolation method, which is you count high density areas, which is where you have counted people either in our last point in time count, or actually we use the outreach viewer to identify known locations. And then you do a statistically significant amount of what is considered low density roads, which is where you didn't find people, and then multiply out. That is what City of Phoenix used and has been using since 2002. And that if we change that extrapolation method, we do have to approve it by HUD. I'm gonna circle back though to the questions we have to ask too, because that has been something that I think has come up quite a bit, is how are we asking questions, interview versus observation, and what does that look like? Especially we have heard last year, we heard it more than previous years, is people get partway through the interview and then they have to switch to an observation, but we already collected that data and now we lose that data. So we are working with we created the app in-house. So we're working with our analytics team to be able to capture that data, not have to lose that data that you already collected. So there's more times where you don't necessarily have to like cancel out. There are required questions by HUD that we have to ask every year. Each year we keep adding questions because people want more and more and more questions asked. But we are really trying to like pull that down and not ask as many questions, because right now when you are interacting with somebody, it can take 20-ish minutes, which does create quite a bit of time, not only for the individual, but also for volunteers to be able to cover their entire area. So I'm really starting to look back at that saying, is this really a required question by HUD? Do we have to ask this? If we don't have to ask this and we're not reporting it out, how can we collect it in a different manner or not collect it?
So Aaron Rain, City of Mesa. Sorry to go down the route hole even further, but it is super labor intensive for the cities. And if it's a metric we're not going to hang our hat on any longer, then maybe not. But I've always thought that if we did like 3 magnet events like Project Connects and had a duality in purpose, counting as well as providing services, I think we might get a better count, and we might have, because the volunteers that volunteer for the city are always feeling like they didn't get to finish. Like they are like, I wanted to help people, and all I had to do was go, and we're playing hide and seek on that day with a population that's really good at hiding, and we lose the game of hide and seek every year. So I think having a magnet event like a Project Connect in the central city, East Valley and West Valley, and draw the people to there to get services on our own, because obviously HUD has those regulations, but if we were to do our own, those services would be being provided anyway, and we just add the count and those questions as part of the survey as they come in. I think we might get a better realistic number of what we're looking at compared to hide and seek.
And that is a strategy that Native American Connections home-based youth services takes to count youth. So they have an event that basically is like, we have resources, we have food, come hang out, and then they count people there. So that is certainly an option. We've seen other organizations.
And the conflict is always sheltered versus unsheltered, right? Because we're trying to count those populations separately. That's why we do it so early. And so early in the morning is super problematic for hide and seek. And so, but it's good for data quality. So I get it, but it complicates things. So that's why I think our own, I love the idea of doing our own at some point, but not just the regular pit count model, doing the dual purpose. So it's the service providers are there to provide service anyway. So
can I also add, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sarah. Okay. I just was also going to add Sarah Sims, Phoenix Elementary. I beat this drum all the time, Haley, so I'm going to beat it again. There's a large number that is never counted because they don't meet the HUD definition, and those are the educationally homeless. And we have ventured down that path in the past to include in the PIC count the educational count. It was a lesson of futility. It did not go well our first attempt, but I would love to see us at least add that asterisk and say this was the count educationally in Arizona, because it's a large number of folks that never make it on the by name wait list.
Go ahead, Nathan. No, Vanessa. Vanessa was going to go.
Vanessa, ABC. I was just going to ask maybe a silly question. Does HUD have listening sessions on feedback about PIC counts or other types of things like that MAG is involved in? Yeah.
And do they listen at the listening session though? This is also a question.
There are sessions when rule change happens. Rule change has not happened around point in time count. However, you're always welcome to talk to Congress because this is an act of Congress. It is written into congressional rule that point in time count has to happen. We are only required to do it every other year, not every year. So far, our community has decided to do it every year because it is a benchmark. But definitely open to only doing it every other year if you all are.
So also for what it's worth, right? So also the thing to think about is I think oftentimes we critique the tool and we don't think of better ways to use the tool. This similar to the VI conversation. You all have heard me say that, like, yes, the VI is horribly flawed, but also we aren't filling the capacity of those that are using the VI to do it differently. And I know we're doing like the whole coordinated entry assessment work group and all of that, like that's all happening. So I'm just using it as an example. But I think, like, what does it look like for us to do a deeper dive around, sorry, I'm like trying not to sneeze, to do a deeper dive around some of the pieces that we're currently trying to extract from the pit count and asking ourselves more intelligent questions around it to say, like, are there other ways to get that data? Like, okay, if we have to do the pit count, we do the pit count, we consistently do the pit count, but are there, like, for example, like Aaron, like when you're talking about like having 3 large Project Connect events, for example, like, is there information that we're using the pit count for that it's just not gonna, like, it's not gonna be adequate for us to get to use that for information, right? But we could do these other things in other ways, and then we're looking for funding for doing things in other ways, so that this way we can actually get that information and then utilize it in a better way, right? Because I think sometimes, like, it's similar to the piece around, like, we're asking all these questions in the pit count, which makes it more difficult, which means that it becomes even more inadequate, that we should be able to utilize, because we're doing these touches with outreach teams and various other things and all this other stuff. We should be able to utilize those tools to get the information that people are, like, using the pit count for, that ultimately, you know, don't get us what we need anyways, right? So I think, like, that's that, like, there's an opportunity there, and having conversations about that as well, to say, like, what else can we do, or what are the other points that we're already doing that we actually need to move that from the pit count to this, like, we need to move it in space, and this way those things can be even more effective in terms of how we utilize, how we get that information, and even asking ourselves, do we need the information, or are we, again, like with the VI, just being nosy as a sector, like we're asking for data that nobody's ever using, and if they're never using it, then what's the point of gathering it? Go ahead, Kelly.
Kelly Williams, MAG. I think the silver lining of doing the pit and doing the pit annually is we have between 900 and 1,000 volunteers who come out to participate in the pit, and it may be their only time that they are interacting with our unsheltered population throughout the year. I think it's a golden opportunity to engage community members and to involve them in the day-to-day struggles of our unsheltered population. And I think there is an opportunity that we could capitalize on, which is the now what? You've participated as a volunteer in the pit. This has grabbed your heart. You have been bothered by what you've seen. How can we now engage you and your social network and your resources and your energy into making this community stronger? And I don't have the game plan for that, but I will say, you know, as I don't think anybody, whether you work in homelessness or whether you don't, going out is untouched by that experience. I think it can be very bothersome, but you have to capitalize on that feeling of discomfort almost immediately to try to get people to continue to want to walk alongside these folks rather than just have it be a once a year check-in.
So would you say that currently the way that we use the pit count is more technical than it is strategic?
Speaking for myself, not speaking for MAG, not speaking for the
understood.
CSA. I think it is a golden opportunity to bother wealthy people or wealthier people into wanting to be concerned about this social issue. And it is a way that we can try to continue to engage them. You know, I like this year after the point in time count, I went to Valley of Sun United Way with an official from USICH who was here visiting, and we met with 25 people who had gone out, many for the first time. And they had interacted with a wide variety of people in the community. And there were people actively sobbing in the after lunch because they were so upset with what they didn't know was happening in alleys and et cetera, in their own communities, in their own neighborhoods. And they didn't know what to do then, right? Because a lot of the people they interacted with were not interested in shelter. They were not interested in whatever resource they may have been able to speak with them about immediately. And so it opens up, I think, just this really great chance for it to not just be a conversation of these same 30 people in these committees that we're talking about, right? So how do we, and maybe, and I don't want to add more work to everybody's plate, but just as an idea, how do we brainstorm the then what that we hand those volunteers? So you did this year and you interacted. Do you want to get involved to make this better for these folks? So there are fewer people that we're counting next year. Here's how you go about doing this. Here's how you volunteer. Here's where you donate. Here's how you can XYZ. I don't know what the list looks like, but I think there's an opportunity to build that list. And I do really think that right after the pit, the next day, or even later that day, is the opportunity where you grab people's hearts and you continue to try to engage them in this work.
I would throw in there too, Kelly. It's and I'm thinking because what Jem was talking about before, it's a really good word. So communications work group already has PIT on the radar. Before we even get those individuals, we should be telling them this is going to move you, and we would love to keep you involved in this work. And to your point, capitalize when they actually get moved. I mean, like Phoenix Rescue Mission thrives on volunteers. So we have long leveraged the PIT count for exactly what you're describing. And then people stick on with us and work alongside us throughout the year or years to come. So you're absolutely right. It's a great opportunity. So I do want to pull us back. We got 10 minutes before we have to move on.
Yeah, I was about to
and what I love that we drilled into so deeply, one of the kinds of examples that we should be brainstorming through on this list of responsibilities. I think there's a few things that if we get a chance to use the runway appropriately in planning around the PIT count, we should make sure to remember things like there are other ways to count that probably are better for grabbing qualitative data than counting. So as you were talking about Project Connect type things, Aaron, like I think those are places where we can ask questions that people will answer. They won't dip out halfway through, and then you got to pull out the observation tool. Like they're there to get served. They're there to, and they're open to talk oftentimes, not always. And so I think there are ways that we can grab qualitative data if it's not a true full count. I think we can just get a really good sample because the information from the survey is good. So I think that's a thing that we need to remember to come back to as we do our planning. The idea of doing a count every other year. And then Sarah, also, I love that you talked about how can we get the McKinney-Vento kids. If we had more time, I'd love to know what happened. You know, maybe next time, like why that was a barrier. We do need to count and gather information around that problem. And it is people experiencing homelessness. So I think that for one, we should gather the information that we're collecting, put it on here's our runway timeline, and then make sure to bring these really good ideas back up and start from there as our starting point rather than where we started today, which was Richard bringing up the topic to talk about for the first time. Also, with these things, I would say big thing I would love, I don't know how labor intensive this is and whatnot, but just to talk it out, one of the challenges I think we will keep running into is that we're not really project planning around these all that well. So my team, I have a team of like 100 people that work under me. They are always doing something. They're always doing a ton of things. I can't keep track of it all. So I use personally Monday.com. Other people use Asana or other types of project software. Here's the point. I don't care if it was an Excel or a Word doc. We are going to have a bunch of steps. Those steps are going to have dates. And if we're not intentional about looking at that ahead of time, we're just going to walk back into it. And then community adopted best practices or PIT count's going to rise up on us again, and we're not going to be well prepared. So I think we should say things like, when should we get started on PIC example, say PIC count? If we're going to be doing the planning in, I don't think it's up there, but and you said September, right? So September, October was mentioned.
September is when it has to start.
When we have to
start convening in October.
So we should know ahead of time. So if we're going to be talking PIC count, we should say August or whatever, and then have a way of knowing what we're trying to do, what we're trying to talk about, and when we want to accomplish certain things by. So I think for me, I like the list. I don't have any issues with the things that are on there. It's just from what is our approach to dealing with the things ahead of time, to being prepared. I would throw out using a project planning software, which is very simple to use, would be great. But again, we could do it in a Word doc just the same. So that's really my comments. I like the stuff. I just want to be more intentional about planning around how to do it.
Jim?
Yes, the communications guy again. So you'll notice in this list, there's a lot of months listed. So I'm going to be looking at it. I did a screenshot and incorporating kind of these things into our conference planning or communications plan. And speaking of communications plan, I don't see that on this list. Should we or could we add a bullet point about devise, update communications plan for XYZ? Is that doable?
We
Is that
can
hard?
do whatever you all want to do.
Okay. Then the third comment, I see a lot of the word review, 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 review. And I'm going, are we reviewing just for us? Or are we reviewing and recommending for somebody else, like the board? Just reviewing just seems kind of, I think we need something more action oriented.
Yes, definitely open to changing any language. I will say for things like the system flow dashboard, the homelessness trends report, the system performance measures, those are, yes, those are like, it is just like for our information. It's not really, we don't really need to take action on them necessarily. But things like the community adopted best practices, like we review and then make changes and then approve it, and then that gets sent up. So there are some things where it's like more actionable, like we would have an additional meeting for it or a work group, however you guys want to tackle it. So yeah, so we could definitely change the language in there to be more descriptive about the things that need more action and the things that truly are just like an FYI.
I think one thing that would be helpful for us, Jim, and thinking about that around the review, right? And like something that you all can hold me accountable to in like 2024, if you decide to have me continue as co-chair with Nathan, because Nathan's not going anywhere. But like us asking the question consistently around review, now what? Right? And when we have the conversation around now what, like making sure that we're all participating in the conversation around now what, and that being from everything that from when we look at the system flow dashboard, now what, because we see this data, so now what do we want to do with it, to the community adopted best practices, so we see them, but now what, like what are we actually going to do? What is our recommendation to the rest of the community around this is what we want to see happen as a result of that? I think that gives us a lot more meat and other toppings in the sandwich to be able to eat, so that we're just not eating bread. Because otherwise, I think that's what happens, is that we get data and then, or we get whatever, we have these great conversations, but then we don't move into the now what stage of the conversation. And so I think like that's a piece that we need to be able to look at, to think about on both ends, both in terms of what is the runway that we need to be able to actualize so that we can actually do something with it, right? And have more robust conversation that we've all prepared around, right? Around these various topics, but then also at the same time, being able to ask ourselves, okay, so now what do we want to do? Because otherwise we're just meeting, and we can do that over happy hour. And that's more fun.
Right.
You know? Last thing I'll say on it too. So just going back to that review comment and thinking about community adopted best practices as an example, because that one's top of mind. We just did that. We can make up what it means to review. Like we define that. We define. So what does it mean? It means committee members review the current document. There's a task and add comments and make comments. So if we did that, we're doing more to own it. 50% of us, for instance, read the document and gave comments on it. That's a great start. Then like we did this year, we meaning MAD, because we didn't really, as the committee, have a ton to do with it, but gather a group of stakeholders and get feedback during office hour sessions on those things. And then the committee has some representation. We've already read the document. We've already thought it through, and we have some representation at the office hours meetings. So there's another task. take the feedback, incorporate it. And then on the back end, it's going to be something about how do we communicate the information back out to everyone. So in other words, when I say review, I basically see a term that says, make up what you really want to do that has action at the very end of it, and then just define those things ahead of time. And so I think that is, as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, oh man, we got to meet like a handful of us, because there are a bunch of steps that we need to probably start to lay out as I look a couple of those things ahead of time. And community adopted best practices gives you some good examples for that.
Yeah, if you guys want to like start a work group or put a group together to meet outside, I would be more than happy to attend that and help you all through it. As a staff member, I would love it if you wanted to put action steps to all the things that we do, just because I think it makes it so much more digestible for not only us as staff, but for all of you to know, like, okay, we know when it comes to reviewing, like you're saying, community adopted best practices, I need to be like mentally committed to these 5 tasks that are going to be involved with doing this. So yes, I would absolutely love that if that's something that you all are interested in.
I bet you the list shrinks once we get that going.
And I think doing that also helps define who we are a little bit better vis-a-vis what the board does, because I'm guessing the board reviews things too. And so
Jim, I'm shaking my head. No, these are things that are assigned to you all. You are responsible for these things. So ultimately, the COC written standards are the committee's owned things. So,
but then that word that needs to be
their consent.
Okay, but that needs to be elaborated upon, because I'm just looking again at the word review, and it's a bulleted list. I get it, but review seems kind of, laid back. To make it more actionable, that would be great.
Great conversation. I'm going to crack the whip and keep us pushing. So going on, just to wrap that part up, at the very least, if in the next chairs meeting that we have, if we can talk about, so Haley and Richard and I, if we can at least there talk about what it would look like to put steps to these and then to track that some way, somehow, that would be great. And then we can maybe bring that back to the committee. Moving on to connecting our systems of care update. Decreasing returns to homelessness was identified as part of the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care System performance measures. In order to accomplish this goal, the work group will discuss the current work being done and how to better focus efforts to increase connections to other systems of care. I had like a surprise family emergency rise for the last meeting, so I wasn't able to make it. So I don't have personally updates to share from the last meeting. If anyone was in attendance and can speak to what's the latest, that would be great.
I also had a family emergency, so I was unable to attend. But yes, Katie ran the meeting. So if you wouldn't mind giving a little update. Sorry. The meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about how did the office hours go, which was a very productive conversation. Notes were sent out to all of the work group members. We also spent quite a bit of time talking about having a funder rapid rehousing provider conversation that we're looking to have in early September with funders and any rapid rehousing providers that are interested. Really, funders are, you all brainstormed in the work group things that would be helpful for funders to know and how to put into practice the things that funders are asking for. So really to have an open discussion on the funder side. They really want to hear that and want to hear how they can better work with you. And also, what does it look like to pilot opportunities prior to actually putting them into a contract? So what does it look like to I think one of the suggestions that came up during the work group was we have, as Nate brought up earlier, contracts are 12 months long, but we can keep people in rapid rehousing for up to 24 months. And so the question to funders is, what does this look like in practicality? And so maybe you can't sign a 24-month contract, but could you commit to being open to transferring people between projects if that contract were to end, for example? So what
what are funders okay with when we were trying to put into practice these new written standards. The other things we talked about are just some of the challenges with rapid rehousing that it would be really helpful for funders to better understand. The need for flexible funding. Could we, as you're closing down a rapid rehousing project towards the end of the month, or the end of the contract year, could you be using the last 3 months? You don't want to put somebody in a new rapid rehousing project, but could you use that as flexible funding, such as deposit assistance and 1 month rent that isn't a traditional rapid rehousing model, but is still able to spend that rapid rehousing grant to its completion. So really kind of meeting in the middle of funders want to spend down this money. They gave you this money for a reason, but also providers have a challenge sometimes with what does that mean in practicality. And so having that conversation in one space, we decided to start with one conversation and then kind of move forward from there. The other thing in response to that first conversation and in response to kind of what other people in the community have asked for, there is going to be an office hours, a community chat about rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. And I am going to hand that to Haley to talk about date and time and structure of that.
Yes, I was gonna say it in the comments at the end, but we can just roll it in here. So we are having, we've heard this both from the committee and from the board that there is interest in like having a space to get feedback from one another on how these programs work, how they can work better. Like, I ran into this problem. Have you run into this problem? What did you do to deal with it? So less like MAG led, but we just wanted to provide the space because we've heard that as a need in the community. So we are hosting that on August 22nd. It is from 2 to 3:30. The first 30 minutes will be focused on permanent supportive housing. The last 30 minutes will be focused on rapid rehousing, and then the middle 30 minutes is overlap. So if it's just like you want to talk about general housing or just hang out with your friends who maybe are a different provider, that'll be virtual, and you can register online. It's on our events calendar, I believe, and then it's also it was in the newsletter if you subscribe. So yeah, and if for some reason you can't find either of those, just email me and I'll shoot you the registration link as well.
Just describe 2 different meetings.
Same meeting. Yeah. It is the 22nd, August 22nd. Yeah. And if it's well attended and people like it, we're happy to continue those on. We haven't decided on a regular cadence because we wanted to see how the first meeting went and to see if people are like, yeah, we want to do this every month, or if every quarter is better, or if nobody attends and it's like, this was a dumb idea, you guys. Then we don't have to have them at all. So yeah, so we'll decide on the cadence after that first meeting, but definitely highly encourage everybody to attend.
And that's going to be, you said that's the one where the funders are attending?
No,
so
this
that
is
a
just
separate
for like housing providers to get feedback from one another, bounce things off one another, get advice, etc.
The meeting with the funders has not yet been established, but it'll be in early September. Date and information to come. It'll be emailed out. I'll also open it to the floor because I know some of you all were in that room with the work group. So any additional things to add that staff didn't cover?
I don't have anything to add. I just, I think the upcoming meeting is a great opportunity, specifically since we're focusing on rapid rehousing, talking with funders and those barriers. I think it's a good opportunity for all the rapid rehousing providers to come together to kind of come to a consensus on what they would like to bring to funders. And maybe when you present it as a group, it's less like, ABC is having this issue and man, ABC is really messing up at this, that puts you in a vulnerable position. And we want to come at it as a community, as providers who are lifting up concerns collectively to address the ultimate mission, which is housing, right? Housing people and meeting their needs. So I will be there as a PSH provider. And I just hope, I just encourage everyone to attend so that we can get together and talk about community goals.
Yes, please forward to all of your friends.
If there's no other discussion, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Decreasing returns to homelessness, again, was identified as part of the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care's system performance measures. In order to accomplish this goal, the COC committee will begin a work group designed to create or revive, perhaps, a work group designed to create one-page reference guides for referring into other systems of care that commonly overlap with the homelessness system, such as healthcare, education, and justice system. So I'll pass it over to you, Haley.
Thank you. So I know this is how our connecting other systems of care sort of originated, but I think it's a better strategy to break it off into two. So what my vision is for this work group is like no more than 4 meetings, and we'll just establish things like who specifically do we want to be getting in contact with? Like which school districts? Do we want to include county colleges? Do we want to include universities, justice systems? Which ones do we want to reach out to? And then once we have that group of people determined, we will like make a survey of like, okay, what's the stuff that we want to know? Like, how do we refer in? Who's the contact person? Where are you located? Whatever. We'll create that list of questions. And then approving the documents to go out. So this is something that I imagine we'll be revisiting, maybe yearly, maybe otherwise, just as information updates. But we definitely wanted to get the ball rolling on this and at least start to get something out. So if somebody from our internal homeless system needed to refer into education, for example, they know who to contact, where to go. So I'm hoping it'll be short and sweet. It'll be done by the end of the year. So yeah, just forming a small work group around that. It's going to be the great opportunity for our brand new intern, Matt, to get some experience in leading a work group. Yeah, so definitely open to any feedback or questions you all have.
Do you want us to send, like, if there's somebody that from our staff, for example, that we want to have as a part of that work group, to send it directly to you, or how would you like to move on that?
I would love that. And so this is committee driven, but doesn't necessarily have to be committee members. So if you're like, oh yeah, maybe not for me, but my colleague would be really great at this, send them my way, pretty please. So we can make sure that we get their input. Because you guys are all amazing, but I know you can't do everything all the time. So please feel free to plug in whoever could represent your agency confidently in giving their feedback on that.
Awesome.
And the output, when it's all said and done, we have a 1-pager that will allow for people within the homelessness system to refer into other systems. Cool. Placeholder, phase 2. People from other systems referring back into the homelessness system. Something that we should tackle as well.
Yes, that is down the road. I think a natural this work group 2.0. So yeah, but we definitely wanted to get something in people's hands so we can get the ball rolling and have something to work off of.
That feels really tangible. So I love that. So you envision 4 meetings. When's meeting 1?
TBD. Definitely want to get a feel for who is interested in it and then make sure that we can fit around their schedule. Because I hate when I schedule meetings and then everyone's like, this is great, I really want to be there. It does not fit in my schedule. I have another standing meeting. So if you guys could reach out to me by the end of the week, and either if you're interested or you have identified a staff that's interested, I would love to connect with them by Friday to get a date on the books.
Awesome.
If I could, Sarah Sims, Phoenix Elementary. So we would be morphing off of connecting systems of care and onto referring.
So they will be 2 independent work groups. So if you
started out on connect.
Yeah, so they're sort of like falling under the same umbrella, but it's like we've now branched off into 2 different avenues. So one will be the work that we're continuing to do with Rapid.
Got it.
And we're going to stay on that path. And then this one is a much shorter path where we can just get something tangible out into the hands of our colleagues in the system.
Perfect. I'm so happy to hear this, just to give my 2 cents worth, because as not a houser nor a funder this was my hope for this so I am thrilled that this is going to be happening, because these documents are so necessary to people like me that are not intimately in the housing and funding. So
yeah, and just a comment.
See you there.
Yeah,
I will. You can count me in.
Okay. Just a quick comment too. It's just a recap. because like it definitely started right where you're at, which was we're getting really close to figuring out how to get into the, so education systems is another system and things like that. And then data analytics work group came in with their presentation on returns to homelessness. And so we had the discussion around, should we do internal or external if we can only pick one? And it was like internal first, but it hurts. And so I'm with you. I love that because this was the one that excited me too. Your education, I'm like hospitals, criminal justice, and we probably all have something like that. So I do love that we're getting it back up, and that I can probably get a staff member to join on that one as well. Any other discussion on this item? All right, so we move on to requests for future agenda items. Do committee members have any action or discussion items for future meetings?
I think we should go swim in the pit pool next month, but like more from a context of some of these, like, what are the questions that we're asking around it? And are there better ways for us to be strategic around that so that we can inform at least, like, do we want to pull certain things out because we want to at least look at, like, what does it look like to do some of those pieces at other times, right? Because we don't have the runway to really like actually drastically change things. But I think to Kelly's point, even a conversation around like the now what with the pit count, and so we can help that get front loaded into the engagement process and the training process and whatnot, I think would be something that's palpable and something that we could do with the time that we have.
Yeah, and on that point, if there is any documentation or anything that you guys want in order to be best prepared for that conversation, please let me know and I'll be happy to include it in your packets.
Marcy McFarland from Home Inc. I was just going to ask, actually, like, because I have done the pit count as a volunteer, but I don't understand the mechanisms that we use for the outreach to possible volunteers. What kind of campaigning do we do? What kind of, how do we get the information out there that we need volunteers? So if we could talk about that as we dive into the pit count, so that we could possibly see gaps or opportunities for more outreach and more help.
Sure, maybe we could do like a little like pit 101 and then get all that together and then have that lead us into our discussion.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Sarah Sims, Phoenix Elementary. I apologize, but did the educational presentation from ADE ever happen to the group? I know we had technical difficulties and then I had to miss a meeting, so I wasn't sure. It did get completed.
It did.
Okay, wonderful. I'm sorry?
It was like the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Your mic is dead. Anything else though that people have? Is it still you or do I get to close it?
Yeah.
Oh, I get to
Oh,
close?
no, I do.
Okay. Yes. Usually I understand. Yes.
Okay. So if there's nothing else for the next agenda item, comments from the committee, is there anyone on the committee that has any other announcements or events that they would like to highlight?
I do. Sarah Sims, Phoenix Elementary. Just wanted to make sure that everyone on the committee knows that our family center has now opened at the historic Kenilworth School. So we just want to make sure that everyone's aware it's open to everyone. We would love to get families in there as early as possible, pregnant moms, get the word out. We want to get kids involved in the public school system as early as possible. So it's on our website, phoenixphxschools.org. If anybody is looking for partnership opportunities, we're always looking for presenters, classes for parents, classes for kids. So just wanted to put that plug out there.
The Capitol's in that school district?
Yep,
Yes.
that's us. That's me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the children that stay at Phoenix Rescue Mission's Changing Lives Center go to Capital L.
Guess how many there are, Nathan? I
There's-
just entered them yesterday.
There are a bunch of them, huh?
24.
Yeah, we're setting records right now.
24 children.
Wow.
So I just
Somber.
took uniforms over and set up Not My Kid. We've got a lot of things going on over there.
Yeah, well, let's talk more about how to leverage that family center.
If you have any promotional material that we could send out, that would be wonderful.
We would love, love, love for Meg to do that for us. We will get it to you. I think we just hired a new director of communication. So be slow with us. We will get it to you when it's good for the public eye. Thank you.
Vanessa. Oh, that's what you're gonna say. Okay. I have one. And what I want to say is that the Human Services Campus is going to be operating a safe outdoor space in collaboration with City of Phoenix, CBI, and St. Vincent's. But we'll be running the day-to-day operations of it. And so I am looking for someone that is transformational, that wants to like do the work in a way that like where they've always dreamed about the impact and now like they actually want to create the impact with their hands, right? And so I'm looking for that individual. So if you are listening to this call and or watching, because this is not just those people that are around the table, but other people watch it as well, and you're like, wait, he's talking about me, then you need to find me. But the position is posted on the website, on our website, hsc-az.org. Or you could Google Human Services Campus, and that position is posted there. But I am looking for somebody who wants to do the work in a way that is transformational and elevating it for this space. So just doing a quite just like shameless plug there. Oh, no, I've got manager positions. I've got supervisor positions. Like, we're going to hire like 50 people, but like, I'm really looking for the person, like I'm using this plug around the person that is the manager, like in that managerial role. Or if you've got folks that you're like, their potential is amazing, but they're not going to get to grow in your own organization. I mean, you can, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Right. And maybe you need them to go out to come back in so they can go out literally outside of the safe outdoor space and lead that work. And then maybe they come back to you later or not, because they might love it with me. But just the same, like I said, looking for somebody in that role, and like look for somebody like quickly in that role, not like this long search. Like I'm trying to do that now. Okay. Thank you.
Does anyone on MAG staff have any other announcements?
I do. So we have, in addition to our rapid rehousing PSH community conversation on August 22nd, 2 to 3:30, we also have a training on adultism. It is put on by the Youth Collaboratory. We are really excited. It is basically best practices on working with youth and young adults. So we really hope that you're able to join us. It is August 17th. It will be recorded and then uploaded into the LMS after. But it is 12:30 to 2, I believe, off the top of my head. Again, it's on the event page and has been plugged in our newsletter. And I think I sent a targeted email out to all the committees too. So if you all are interested in attending that or have staff that you want to attend, definitely send them our way. We would love that. We're hoping that it'll be a really good conversation. So anybody who works with youth or young adults, we also have a youth action committee that will be working with all of you guys. So just something good to keep in mind. And then also we got information from the Arizona Department of Housing. They are hosting a feedback session and are looking for input from their community stakeholders on the historic level of state investments recently passed. So that will be on next Monday, August 14th at 2 p.m. You do need to pre-register. It's virtual, but that is on ADOH's website in their newsletter. But if you guys are interested in it and you don't already subscribe, let me know and I can forward you the information as well. And I think that is it, unless any other MAG staff has.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Gruters, also at MAG, just started, so happy to be here. Wanted to let you know that we're going to be doing an outreach collaborative, like getting that back going again. I get to be part of it, super excited because I love outreach. So next week, the 16th on Wednesday, 2 to 3, also virtual. Already sent the invite out, so you should have it. We went off the last collab mailing list. If you want to be part of it and didn't get that, send me an email. And I don't know, is that in the notes that go out? My email? Or okay, yeah,
You can also email me and I'll send you over to Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Brian, welcome. It's great to have you as part of the COC. I'm sure MAG staff's happy to have you. You're definitely joining like my favorite crop of MAG staff to work with. Shamelessly, I'm allowed to say that. I can say whatever I want. And Matt.
Yes.
Well, he doesn't have for sport the
He doesn't
the,
have, you
name
haven't
tag
given
was in
him a
the
name
leaves in
tag
between,
yet.
so I was like, they're like the brothers Grooters, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, welcome.
Yes, Matt is our intern this year. He will be with us for the whole year, so you'll see his face quite a bit. He comes to us from ASU School of Social Work. Whoop, go Devils. And we are so lucky to have him. So keep an eye out and definitely give him a warm welcome.
I did actually. So I kind of figured once you were this Brian, I've got the rest together. Yeah. All right. Is there any other comments, MAG staff or anyone else, including those on Zoom? Wonderful. Well, with no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.